What if some of the world's oldest monuments weren't built with tools we understand? What if the stones beneath the ocean or carved into remote deserts hold secrets that science still can't explain? Tonight we'll explore some of the most unsolved prehistoric structures that continue to puzzle archaeologists. Welcome to Unearthed Mysteries, where we uncover the forgotten wonders of our past. If you enjoy exploring the unknown, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. The Dragon King's palace beneath the waves, far beneath the restless waves of the Pacific, where the sunlight dissolves into shifting shadows and the ocean hums with a sound older than memory. There is a place that stirs both awe and confusion. Divers who descend along the southern coast of Yonaguni Island in Okinawa, Japan, speak of something extraordinary hidden beneath the blue, a structure so vast and deliberate-looking that it defies the natural chaos of the seabed. They call it the Yonaguni Monument. But to the people of the island and to dreamers who still believe in legends, it is something else. A palace of the Dragon King, a relic of a civilization swallowed by the sea thousands of years ago. The waters here are not calm. Strong currents push divers like invisible hands, and as the bubbles from their gear rise toward the surface, they catch their first glimpse of the monument. It is not a mere rock. From the shadows emerges a massive series of terraces, steps, and platforms, their angles sharp and geometric, almost like the steps of a temple carved by human hands. The structure is enormous, about 150 meters long, 40 meters wide, and rising nearly 20 meters high. It looks as though a forgotten city once stood here, now buried under centuries of oceanic silence. When you see it for the first time, even in photographs or videos, you can't help but question, could nature really have created something like this? The monument features flat surfaces and clean edges, with steps so symmetrical they seem to have been built for ceremonial processions. A flat, wide terrace leads down to what resembles a stage or platform. One section even looks like a road, a pathway leading to nowhere but the depths. It's as if a temple, a palace, or perhaps even an entire city has been left sleeping beneath the sea, untouched by time, except for the softening hand of coral and algae. Some geologists argue that the monument is a natural formation, shaped by the region's unique sandstone and the relentless erosion of waves. Sandstone, they say, fractures along straight lines, creating the illusion of man-made geometry. And yet, others disagree. Marine archaeologist Masaki Kimura, one of the monument's most vocal researchers, believes the structure is too precise, too deliberate, to be the work of nature alone. He has mapped what he believes to be stairs, stone walls, and even carvings on the surface of the monument, suggesting that humans once walked here. But if humans did build this, the question becomes when. The monument lies about 25 meters below the surface, in waters that would have been dry land during the last ice age, roughly 10,000 years ago. Could it be that a civilization, unknown to history, built this structure at a time when sea levels were lower, long before recorded history? If so, that would make it older than the Great Pyramids of Giza, older than Stonehenge, older even than most of humanity's known architectural endeavors. The people of Okinawa have their own stories about this place. In their legends, the sea is ruled by Raijin, the Dragon King, who lives in a palace beneath the waves. This palace, called Raijin-jo, is described as a shimmering underwater castle, with walls made of coral and floors of pure white sand. Fishermen once told tales of being taken there by sea turtles or dragons, returning days later to find that years had passed on land. When divers see the Yonaguni Monument, with its imposing platforms and looming steps, they can't help but feel the echo of that legend. Could this be the very palace of the Dragon King? The monument's mystery deepens when you look closer. Some divers claim to have seen what resemble carvings, lines etched into the stone, patterns too regular to be natural. One section looks like a series of pillars or columns. Another resembles a large face, as if an ancient statue had been carved into the side of the rock. Kimura's team has even found what they believe to be the remains of a road or avenue stretching away from the monument, as though this was once part of a much larger city now buried beneath centuries of sand and sea. Skeptics, of course, remain unconvinced. To them, the monument is a beautiful but natural formation, its angles and steps nothing more than the handiwork of wind, waves, and tectonic activity over millennia. The ocean floor here is unstable, shaped by earthquakes and underwater landslides. It's easy, they say, for the mind to see patterns where none exist, to see temples and roads in the randomness of nature. But even the most skeptical divers admit that standing before the monument feels like standing in the ruins of something powerful and forgotten. The monument also aligns in curious ways with the sun during certain times of the year. Some researchers have observed that certain terraces and edges seem to correspond with solstice angles, as though whoever built or revered this place had a deep understanding of astronomy. If this was indeed the work of an ancient civilization, then they were not just builders but astronomers, mathematicians, and architects far more advanced than we give early humans credit for. To imagine what this place might have looked like before it sank is to imagine a lost world. Picture a sprawling coastal city, with stone steps leading to temples where priests or kings prayed to the Dragon King. Imagine wooden structures rising above the terraces, markets bustling with trade, fires burning in clay ovens, and children playing on stone paths now buried beneath layers of coral and salt. And then a cataclysm, an earthquake, a flood, or the slow, inexorable rise of the sea swallowed it whole. Some researchers link the Yonaguni monument to the legend of Mu'a, a mythical lost continent said to have vanished beneath the Pacific Ocean. Like Atlantis in the West, Mu'a is often dismissed as fantasy, but the monument gives believers reason to hope. If not Mu'a, perhaps Yonaguni is the remnant of a once thriving culture that left no written records but etched its legacy in stone. Could these be the last steps of a civilization erased by time? Swimming around the monument is like stepping into another era. Fish dart through the gaps between stones, their scales glimmering like fragments of sunlight. Coral has claimed parts of the structure, softening its once sharp lines with living color. The currents whisper against the terraces, carrying grains of sand and tiny shells, slowly wearing away at the monument's face. And yet even under this ceaseless erosion, the structure remains resilient, defiant, as though it refuses to be forgotten. The feeling of diving there is surreal. Divers often describe a sense of silence that is deeper than normal underwater quiet, as though the ocean itself is holding its breath. The sheer scale of the monument makes you feel small, insignificant, like a visitor wandering through the abandoned halls of an ancient palace. The steps are massive, so tall that a person feels like a child standing on them. Who were they built for? Were the builders giants, or simply people with a different sense of scale and purpose? There are still parts of the monument that remain unexplored. The currents can be dangerous, and visibility changes with the seasons. Some divers claim there are tunnels or hidden chambers, sealed off or buried under centuries of debris. If true, these could hold artifacts, tools, carvings, or even skeletal remains that would finally prove the monument's origins. But no such discoveries have been confirmed. For now, it remains a place of questions. The Japanese government has been cautious about declaring Yonaguni an archaeological site. Officially, it is treated as a diving attraction, a beautiful underwater landmark. But privately, some scholars and researchers continue to study it, scanning it with sonar and creating 3D maps in the hopes of unraveling its story. Kimura himself has said that he believes the monument could be more than 10,000 years old, which, if proven, would force a complete rethinking of human history in East Asia. What makes this mystery so compelling is that it combines science, history, and legend into one. On one hand, you have geology, the natural processes of stone and water creating fascinating shapes. On the other, you have the whispers of a lost civilization, the possibility that long before the rise of the Japanese islands, as we know them, there were people here capable of feats of architecture we have yet to fully understand. And woven between these two narratives is the legend of the Dragon King's palace, a story that refuses to fade even in the age of modern science. Standing on the shore of Yonaguni Island, it's easy to feel the weight of this mystery. The waves crash against the rocks, sending sprays of salt into the air. Fishermen cast their lines, as they have for generations, and the wind carries the scent of the sea. Somewhere out there, beneath the waves, lies a monument that could change everything we know about the past, or prove nothing at all. But perhaps the truth isn't the point. Perhaps the monument's purpose now is to remind us of how much we still don't know, of how many secrets the earth and sea still keep. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it. The creak of wood from ships long gone, the hum of chanting from stone platforms, the distant roar of the Dragon King, sleeping in his palace beneath the waves, waiting for the day when we are ready to hear his story. The wall that sleeps beneath the Baltic Sea, beneath the cold, grey waters of the Baltic Sea, where sunlight fades into greenish shadows and the seafloor stretches silent and undisturbed, lies a wall that should not exist. It is not a natural ridge or a chaotic scattering of stones, but something far more deliberate, something that seems to have been placed there by human hands, long before history began. Divers and researchers who have seen it call it the Wall, a structure that has been sleeping beneath the waves for thousands of years, patiently holding its secrets. The discovery of this wall happened almost by accident. In 2021, a team of marine geologists from Germany, led by Professor Jacob Geersen, was mapping the seafloor of the Bay of Mecklenburg using advanced sonar equipment. Their goal was simple: to teach students how to chart underwater landscapes. But as the sonar scanned the murky depths, it revealed something unexpected: a perfectly linear structure stretching across the seabed for nearly half a kilometer, or about 1,600 feet. At first, the team thought they were looking at a natural ridge. The Baltic is filled with glacial deposits, rocks scattered by ancient ice sheets, but this structure was different. The stones were arranged in a pattern too orderly to be random, large boulders carefully positioned in a continuous line, some stacked with smaller stones in between, like the remnants of a long-forgotten wall. When the divers descended to inspect it, the realization struck them: it wasn't just a line of stones, it was a structure built with purpose, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, at a time when this part of the Baltic Sea was still dry land. The wall sits about 21 meters below the surface, in a place where the water is cold and visibility is poor. Algae and marine growth cover the stones, giving them a muted greenish-brown color. Yet, even through this cloak of time, you can see how deliberate the placement is. Large boulders, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, form the spine of the structure, while smaller stones fill the gaps like mortar. It is not just a random pile of rocks. This was built. But built for what? Professor Geersen believes that the wall was once part of a prehistoric hunting structure, more than 11,000 years ago. During the Stone Age, the region that is now the Baltic Sea was a frozen tundra, home to wild reindeer herds that roamed in vast numbers. The theory is that the wall was used as a funnel or trap. Hunters would have driven animals toward the wall, forcing them into narrower paths or even into shallow waters, where they could be easily caught. Similar stone hunting structures have been found on land in other parts of Europe and North America, but this one is unique because it now lies at the bottom of the sea. If this theory is true, it would mean that the wall was built by people who lived in a world that no longer exists, a landscape swallowed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. When the glaciers melted and sea levels rose, entire regions were submerged, places where humans once hunted, built, and thrived. The Baltic Sea, as we know it today, was once dry land dotted with lakes, rivers, and forests. The wall is a rare and haunting reminder of that lost world. As divers swim along its length, they describe a strange feeling, like moving through a doorway in time. The stones are quiet now, home only to crabs, small fish, and the occasional drifting jellyfish. But if you close your eyes, you can almost imagine the hunters of the past standing there, dressed in furs, gripping spears, waiting for the reindeer to approach. The wall becomes not just a pile of rocks, but a window into the lives of people who lived more than 9,000 years ago, people who were skilled enough, organized enough to build something that could survive millennia beneath the sea. What makes the Baltic Wall even more fascinating is its sheer scale. It stretches for nearly 1,600 feet, which would have required a significant collective effort to build. These weren't just scattered stones. They were moved, arranged, and placed with a clear understanding of how to manipulate the landscape for survival. Each boulder, some weighing as much as a small car, would have taken multiple people to shift into place. Imagine the effort it took to drag these stones across the frozen ground, aligning them in a perfect line, all without the wheels, cranes, or metal tools we take for granted today. There's also a question of age. If the wall is truly from the late Stone Age, that places its construction sometime around 9,000 to 11,000 years ago, a time when much of Europe was still recovering from the last ice age. That makes it far older than many of the ancient structures we admire today, like the pyramids of Giza or Stonehenge. It's a humbling thought. While we marvel at those wonders, a group of hunter-gatherers, long before civilization began, was already engineering the landscape in ways we're only now rediscovering. But not everyone agrees on the wall's purpose. Some archaeologists wonder if it might have been part of a settlement, a foundation wall for dwellings or animal enclosures. Others suggest it could have been a ceremonial or spiritual structure, something built not just for survival but for meaning, a marker of territory, or a monument to ancestors. Without tools or artifacts nearby, it's hard to say for certain. The wall, after all, is just stones. It doesn't tell its story easily. What we do know is that the discovery of this wall has changed how we view the Stone Age in Northern Europe. It proves that people here weren't just nomadic hunters living hand to mouth. They were organized, strategic, and capable of reshaping their environment. They understood how to manipulate both animals and landscapes to ensure survival. It's a glimpse of intelligence and cooperation that often gets overlooked when we think about early humans. The site is now under careful study. Teams of archaeologists, divers, and marine scientists are using sonar, 3D mapping, and underwater drones to document every stone. They hope to find tools, weapons, or other traces of human activity nearby, evidence that could definitively prove the wall's origins. Already there are hints of other structures in the area, smaller lines of stones that might have been part of a larger hunting system. Could there be an entire Stone Age landscape preserved beneath the Baltic, waiting to be discovered? There's also the haunting possibility that this wall is just the beginning. All around the world, rising seas have hidden countless traces of humanity's past. Coastal cities, settlements, and hunting grounds have all been swallowed by the ocean, leaving only whispers of their existence. The wall beneath the Baltic is like a message from those lost lands, a reminder that our history is far older and more complex than we imagine. Divers who visit the wall describe an almost eerie silence there. The Baltic Sea is not as clear or vibrant as tropical waters. It's darker, colder, and filled with drifting silt that makes everything feel ghostly. As they swim over the stones, the divers can feel the weight of time pressing in around them. This isn't just an underwater curiosity, it's a direct connection to people who lived and died thousands of years ago, who faced challenges and climates we can barely comprehend, and who still managed to leave their mark on the earth. If you were to stand on the seafloor and run your hand over the stones, you'd feel the smoothness of water-worn rock, the cracks where tiny creatures hide, and the occasional sharp edge that suggests human shaping. It's easy to imagine the hunters bending over these same stones, adjusting them, setting them into place, never knowing that one day their work would end up deep beneath an alien sea. There are moments when the wall almost feels alive. In the shifting light, as waves ripple above, the stones cast moving shadows that resemble figures, like the spirits of the hunters, still lingering, still waiting. It's easy to romanticize such places, to see them as monuments not just to survival, but to the quiet persistence of human effort. Long after the hunters vanished, long after their names and stories were forgotten, their work remains. What secrets does the wall still keep? Could there be artifacts buried in the silt nearby? Arrowheads, carvings, tools made of bone or wood? Researchers hope to answer these questions in the years ahead. Each dive reveals something new, even if it's just a better sense of how the stones fit together, or how the currents have shaped the site over time. But there is still so much we don't know. For now, the wall sleeps beneath the Baltic Sea, a silent sentinel from a time before history, a time when the world was colder and wilder, when the land stretched further, and people lived closer to the rhythms of nature. To dive there is to feel that ancient rhythm again, to be reminded of how small and fleeting we are compared to the deep memory of the earth. And as you ascend back to the surface, breaking through the grey waves and breathing the air of the present, you can't help but look back at the water and wonder, how many other walls lie hidden beneath the seas? How many cities, villages, or monuments have been swallowed by time and tide, their stories waiting patiently in the silence of the deep? Scotland's stone village of shadows, on a lonely stretch of Scotland's rugged Orkney Islands, where the wind howls like a forgotten voice and the sea gnaws at the edges of the land, lies a village unlike any other. It is not bustling with life now, but it once was. Today, only stones remain, cold, weathered, and silent. This place, known as the Brooch of Gurness, is sometimes called Scotland's Stone Village of Shadows, because it feels as if the ghosts of its builders still linger in the cracks of its walls. The Orkney Islands are wild and untamed. Their coastline is shaped by relentless waves, and their cliffs rise like dark guardians against the grey sea. Even now the area feels isolated, as though time has folded here, trapping echoes of the ancient past. When you step onto this land, you can feel the wind carrying whispers of lives lived long ago. You almost expect to see figures moving among the ruins, figures dressed in furs and wool, tending fires or calling out across the settlement. The Brooch of Gurness is believed to be around 2,500 years old, built during Scotland's Iron Age. But calling it a village hardly does it justice. It was a fortress, a community, and perhaps a sanctuary. At its heart stands the Brooch, a massive round tower made entirely of dry stone. No mortar was used, just the careful, almost artistic placement of stones, each interlocked with the others. Even after thousands of years, the walls, thick and strong, still rise several meters high, defying the storms and centuries. Walking into the Brooch, you can still see the remnants of its clever design. The walls are hollow, with staircases built inside them, spiraling upward toward where the upper levels once stood. This would have given the people who lived here both a vantage point to watch for approaching dangers and protection from invaders. The brooch wasn't built just for beauty or shelter, it was built to endure. Surrounding the central tower is a network of smaller stone buildings, once homes where families lived together. Imagine the warmth of a fire glowing inside, the smell of peat smoke curling into the air, and the sound of people grinding grain or shaping tools. These stone houses, now roofless and exposed to the sky, tell stories in their silence. You can see the remains of stone furniture, hearths, benches, and even beds, still in place, frozen as if the inhabitants had simply stepped out one day and never returned. But the shadows of this village are not only physical, there is mystery here, questions that no one has been able to answer fully. Who exactly built the Brooch of Gurnus? Why did they choose this wind-swept exposed headland? And why, after centuries of life, did they abandon it? Some archaeologists believe the Brooch's builders were skilled farmers and fishers who thrived here because of the sea's bounty. Others suggest that its placement had spiritual significance, perhaps aligning with the stars or marking a sacred site. The people who lived here would have known the rhythms of the ocean and sky, using them to guide planting, harvesting, and ceremonies. We can still feel a sense of their connection to the land in the way the structures are laid out, practical but harmonious, sturdy but not soulless. The Orkney Islands have always had an air of mystery. Long before the brooch, other ancient monuments dotted these islands, stone circles, like the Ring of Brodgar, and tombs like Maeshowe. Some scholars believe that the people who built the brooch were descendants of these earlier Neolithic builders, carrying forward traditions of working with stone that spanned thousands of years. It is as if the land itself taught them how to shape stone, how to make it both strong and alive. When the sun sets on Gurnus, the ruins seem to breathe. Shadows stretch across the stones, and the outlines of the old homes look almost like skeletons of a village that refuses to die. The wind whistles through the gaps in the walls, sounding like distant voices. There's a reason locals call it the Stone Village of Shadows. Visitors often describe a sense of being watched here, not in a sinister way, but as though the spirits of the past are quietly observing, curious about those who walk among their old homes. One of the most intriguing aspects of the Brooch of Gurnus is how advanced its builders were for their time. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of metalworking here, as well as pottery and intricate tools. These weren't just simple villagers, they were skilled craftsmen, capable of shaping not only stone but also bronze and iron. They built hearths with built-in drains, storage pits for grain, and defensive walls that would have required a coordinated community effort to construct. The scale of the Brooch's central tower alone suggests that this wasn't just a village, it was a statement of power and resilience. And yet, despite its strength, the village eventually fell silent. By the time the Norse Vikings began raiding the Orkney Islands around the 9th century, the Brooch had long been abandoned. We don't know why. Was it a slow decline, with families leaving one by one as resources ran out? Or was there a sudden event, a conflict, a famine, or a storm that forced them to flee? We may never know. The stones keep their secrets. Standing inside the ruins today, it's not hard to imagine life here in its prime. The central fire glowing in the hearth, smoke rising into the night sky, families huddled together against the chill. The children would have played among the stones, their laughter echoing off the thick walls. Outside, the sea would have been both a provider and a threat, offering fish but also bringing fierce storms. Every stone in the village seems to hold a memory of those lives, etched into its surface like invisible carvings. Some visitors say that Gurnus feels almost like a dream. There's a stillness to the place, broken only by the wind and the distant cries of seabirds. It feels removed from the modern world, as though time has simply forgotten it. Perhaps that is part of its power. The brooch stands as a reminder of a world where survival depended on strength, ingenuity, and a deep connection to the land. But Gurnus is not just a relic of the past, it's also a story of endurance. These stones have stood for 2,500 years, through storms, wars, and endless winters. They have watched generations come and go, and they will likely remain long after we're gone. In a way, the brooch is like a living being, a monument to the persistence of human hands and the will to create something that lasts. If you ever visit the Orkney Islands and find yourself walking through Gurnus at dusk, you'll feel that strange, almost magical presence the village holds. The stones glow softly in the fading light, and the wind seems to carry whispers from another age. It's easy to pause there just for a moment and imagine the people who once called this place home, what they dreamed of, what they feared, and what they hoped to leave behind. The stone village of shadows is more than a ruin, it's a testament to human resilience, a bridge between the ancient world and ours. Every stone, every wall, every fragment of pottery buried beneath the earth is a reminder that people have always sought to build, to endure, and to leave something of themselves behind. And here on this lonely headland in Scotland, they succeeded. The Forest of Standing Stones at Carnac. In the quiet countryside of Brittany, in northwestern France, lies a place unlike any other on earth. It is not a forest of trees, but a forest of stone, thousands of tall weathered stones rising from the ground like silent sentinels, stretching across fields and meadows as far as the eye can see. This is Carnac, one of the most mysterious ancient sites in the world, a place where time feels suspended and history whispers through the wind. The stones have stood here for over 6,000 years, older than the Great Pyramids of Egypt, older even than Stonehenge, and yet no one truly knows why they were placed in such strange and mesmerizing formations. Imagine walking into this landscape for the first time. The morning mist clings low to the ground, wrapping the stones in a ghostly veil. As the sunlight breaks through the fog, shadows stretch and bend, making the stones appear alive. They stand in long, straight rows, like an army frozen in time, marching endlessly toward the horizon. There are over 3,000 stones here, some standing taller than a man, others no bigger than a child. Each stone is unique, its surface scarred by millennia of rain and wind, and yet together they form a vast, mysterious pattern. You cannot help but wonder who placed them here, and for what purpose. The stones of Carnac are known as menhirs, a word that means long stones in the old Breton language. They are arranged in alignments, rows that stretch over kilometers, as well as in clusters, circles and solitary standing stones scattered across the countryside. Some of these stones weigh several tons, and the largest, called the Genon du Marnio, stands over 6 meters tall. How ancient people managed to transport such enormous stones without wheels or modern machinery is still a mystery. Some suggest they dragged them on wooden sledges, using ropes made of animal hide and teams of hundreds of workers. Others believe they used logs as rolling supports, moving the stones inch by inch across the land. Yet even if that explains the transportation, the question remains, why? Theories about Carnac are as varied as the stones themselves. Some archaeologists believe the alignments were built as an enormous astronomical observatory, used to track the movements of the sun, the moon and the stars. When you walk along certain rows, you can see that the stones line up with the rising or setting sun on specific days of the year, such as the solstices and equinoxes. Could these stones have been part of a giant calendar, helping ancient farmers mark the seasons for planting and harvesting? Others argue that Carnac was a sacred place, perhaps a site of rituals, ceremonies, or even burials. Some of the stones are carved with mysterious symbols, spirals, circles, and human-like figures, hinting at spiritual beliefs that have long been forgotten. It is possible that each row of stones represented a pathway to the afterlife, or a connection between the earth and the heavens. Walking among them, you can almost feel a presence, as if the stones themselves are watching, remembering something too old for words. There is also a local legend that adds to the air of mystery. According to Breton folklore, the stones of Carnac were once a Roman army turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. The rows of menhirs, some say, are the petrified soldiers still standing in formation, forever frozen by ancient magic. Whether you believe in such tales or not, it is hard to deny that Carnac feels like a place where myth and reality blur together. As you move deeper into the site, you notice how carefully the stones are arranged. They are not random, they follow patterns, some curving slightly, others forming precise circles or squares. The sheer scale of the site is staggering. Fields of stones stretch for over 4 kilometers, with different sections known by names like Menec, Camario, and Curliscan. Each section has its own unique character. In Menec, the stones start small and gradually increase in size, almost as if they were meant to represent a journey or transformation. In Camario, the rows feel endless, fading into the distance like waves on a frozen ocean. Standing in the middle of these stones, time feels different. There is no sound except for the wind and the occasional cry of a bird overhead. You begin to imagine the lives of the people who built this place. They were farmers, hunters, and gatherers, living thousands of years before written history. To them, the world was full of spirits, gods, and mysteries. The sky was a map, and the earth was alive with forces they sought to honor and understand. Carnac, perhaps, was their way of reaching out to the universe, of leaving a message that would endure long after they were gone. Some researchers have suggested that Carnac may have been built in stages over many generations. The oldest stones could date back as far as 4500 BCE, during the Neolithic period. Imagine a community returning year after year, decade after decade, to raise more stones, adding to the alignments like a painter adding strokes to a vast canvas. Each generation might have had its own reasons for contributing, its own ceremonies and beliefs. In this way, Carnac became not just a monument, but a living tradition, a reflection of centuries of human effort and imagination. And yet, as impressive as the site is, we know so little about it. Unlike Stonehenge, which has been studied extensively, Carnac has been less explored, partly because of its enormous size. Excavations have uncovered some artifacts, pottery, stone tools and evidence of nearby settlements, but nothing that definitively explains the purpose of the stones. Perhaps that is part of Carnac's allure. It is a puzzle with no solution, a silent question mark standing in the fields of Brittany. Imagine being here at night, when the moonlight washes over the stones. They cast long, eerie shadows, and the rows look like ghostly figures marching into the darkness. The stars above, the same stars that ancient builders must have looked upon, seem to shine a little brighter. Some visitors say that Carnac feels alive at night, as if the stones hum with an energy that cannot be explained. Whether this is just the power of imagination, or something more, no one can say for certain. In recent years, archaeologists have begun using modern technology, like ground-penetrating radar and drone surveys, to study the area around Carnac. They have discovered traces of ancient wooden structures, ditches, and burial mounds that suggest the stones were part of a larger ceremonial complex. But even with these findings, the true meaning of Carnac remains elusive. It is both a monument to human ingenuity and a reminder of how much we have forgotten about our own past. Carnac is not just about the stones themselves, it is about the landscape. The fields, the rolling hills, the distant coastline, all of these elements seem to be part of the design. When you walk among the stones, you can sense how the builders must have seen this place not just as land, but as a sacred canvas. Perhaps they believed the stones anchored the earth, keeping balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. Perhaps they believed that by aligning these massive stones with the heavens, they could bring harmony to their lives. There is a quiet beauty to Carnac that is hard to describe. Unlike other famous monuments, it is not enclosed or isolated. The stones are scattered across farmland, with sheep grazing nearby and small villages just beyond the horizon. Life continues here, modern and ancient existing side by side, and yet every time you pass by one of these stones, you feel a sense of reverence. These stones have stood for thousands of years, weathering storms and wars, watching the rise and fall of civilizations. They have seen everything and remain unmoved. The stones themselves have character. Some are tall and slender, others short and wide. Some lean slightly, as if bowing to the earth, while others stand defiantly upright. Their surfaces are rough, covered in lichen and moss, giving them an almost living texture. When you touch one, it feels cold and solid, as though you are touching the very bones of the earth. There is something humbling about this, knowing that these stones will likely still be here long after we are gone. Carnac is also a place of stories. For centuries, locals have told tales of the stones moving on their own, shifting slightly under the moonlight. Some believe they are guardians, watching over the land. Others think they mark the graves of ancient kings or heroes. In truth, we may never know the stories behind these stones, but perhaps that is what makes them so powerful. They invite us to imagine, to dream, to wonder. As you leave Carnac, you cannot help but feel changed. There is a weight to the place, not just from the stones, but from the passage of time they represent. Thousands of years ago, someone stood here, in this very spot, looking out at the rows of stones, just as you are now. They may have felt awe, pride, or hope. They may have whispered prayers or sung songs that have long since been lost, but their presence remains, etched into the earth, carried forward by the stones they raised. Carnac is a reminder that history is not just written in books or carved into monuments we understand. It is also hidden in the mysteries we have yet to solve. The stones stand silently, not offering answers, but inviting questions. What drove these ancient people to move such enormous stones? What did they hope to achieve? What did they believe about the universe, the earth, and their place within it? Perhaps that is the true gift of Carnac. It forces us to think beyond ourselves, to see time not as a straight line, but as a circle, where past, present, and future are all connected. These stones, older than memory, are still here, waiting for us to listen. The Ring of Brodgar and its silent watch. In the far northern reaches of Scotland, where the winds from the North Atlantic sweep across rugged hills and moorlands, lies an ancient monument that has watched over the Orkney Islands for more than 4,000 years. This is the Ring of Brodgar, a massive stone circle that stands like a silent guardian, its weathered stones forming a perfect ring on the windswept plain. It is a place where the modern world fades, and the whispers of an older forgotten time seem to echo through the cold air. The Orkney Islands themselves feel like a land between worlds. The skies here are vast, often filled with rolling grey clouds, and the landscape is wild, scattered with lochs, hills, and low, treeless expanses. It is a place where history feels close to the surface. Every gust of wind seems to carry the scent of the sea and the stories of those who came long before. Among these islands, the Ring of Brodgar is one of the most mysterious monuments, a relic of a civilization that left no written records, only stones and shadows of meaning. The Ring of Brodgar is not as famous as Stonehenge, yet in many ways it is just as impressive and perhaps even more haunting. Standing at almost 104 meters in diameter, it is one of the largest stone circles in the world, originally consisting of 60 towering stones. Today, only 36 remain standing, their dark silhouettes rising from the green and gold of the moorland. Each stone is unique, shaped not by human hands but by the slow carving of nature, then chosen, moved, and set upright by people who lived in an age before metal tools or wheels. Imagine being here at dawn, when the first light of day spills across the horizon. The stones cast long, thin shadows and the air is cold and damp. A thin mist drifts over the ground, wrapping the ring in a veil of mystery. It feels as if the stones are alive, watching, waiting, keeping some ancient promise. As you step closer, you can see the marks of time etched into their surfaces, cracks, lichens, patches of moss. You might place your hand on one and feel the chill of thousands of years pressing back. The purpose of the Ring of Brodgar remains a mystery. Archaeologists believe it was built sometime between 2500 and 2000 BCE, during the late Neolithic period, a time when Orkney was home to a thriving community of farmers, builders, and artisans. This was a culture that raised monumental structures, massive stone tombs, ceremonial villages, and rings like this one, suggesting a society with deep spiritual and astronomical knowledge. Some believe the ring was used for ceremonies, a sacred space where the people of Orkney gathered to mark important events, honor their ancestors, or celebrate the cycles of the seasons. The alignment of the stones with the surrounding hills and lochs hints that the builders were watching the skies, tracking the movement of the sun and moon. Standing inside the circle, it's easy to imagine how the rising sun at midsummer or the long shadows of midwinter might have been part of rituals lost to time. Yet the Ring of Brodgar is not just about the stones themselves. The entire landscape around it seems to be part of a greater, hidden design. Nearby lies the Ness of Brodgar, an extraordinary archaeological site filled with the remains of ancient buildings, decorated stones, and ceremonial artifacts. There is also the Standing Stones of Stemness, another circle just a short walk away, and the mysterious Machaut tomb, aligned perfectly with the setting sun during the winter solstice. Together, these sites form a sacred complex, a network of monuments that once held deep meaning for the people who built them. Walking through this landscape today, you can almost sense the energy that must have filled it thousands of years ago. Perhaps the Ring of Brodgar was a gathering place not just for rituals but for storytelling, music, and feasts, moments when the scattered communities of Orkney came together under the open sky. The ring might have been a stage for marking life's great passages, birth, death, harvest, and renewal, where the people connected their lives to the rhythms of the earth and the heavens. There is something deeply human about the Ring of Brodgar. Though its purpose remains hidden, you can feel the intention behind it, the desire to create something lasting, something that connects the living to the mysteries of time. Each stone, carefully placed, would have required enormous effort. Without wheels or modern tools, the builders would have dragged the stones across the land, using ropes, wooden sledges, and sheer determination. It might have taken entire villages working together, not just to raise the stones but to celebrate the act of building itself. At night, the ring transforms. The Orkney sky, free from city lights, is a canvas of stars, with the Milky Way spilling across the darkness, like a river of light. Under this sky, the stones take on an almost otherworldly presence. They stand like sentinels, silhouetted against the stars, as if keeping a silent watch over the land. You can almost imagine the ancient builders standing here too, gazing up at the same stars, their hearts filled with wonder and questions that remain the same across millennia. The weather here adds to the feeling of timelessness. The wind never really stops, it whistles through the stones, carrying with it the scent of salt and peat, the cry of distant seabirds. Sometimes rain sweeps across the moor, drenching the land in minutes, only to give way to shafts of sunlight that make the stones glow like bronze. To stand at the Ring of Brodgar is to feel small but connected to the land, to history, to the countless generations who have stood here before. Local legends add another layer of mystery. One story tells of a group of giants who tried to cross the land but were caught by the rising sun and turned to stone. The ring in this tale is their petrified dance, forever frozen in time. Other stories suggest the ring is a place of power, where the veil between the worlds is thin, and spirits move quietly among the stones. Whether you believe in such stories or not, there is no denying that the Ring of Brodgar feels like a place touched by something beyond ordinary life. Even today, the ring draws people from around the world. Some come as tourists, others as pilgrims, seeking a connection to the past or to something deeper within themselves. Many say that standing inside the circle brings a sense of calm, a stillness that is hard to find in the modern world. Perhaps it is the silence, or the age of the stones, or the way the ring is open to the sky. It invites reflection, a feeling of being part of a much larger story. As the sun sets over the Orkney hills, the stones cast long shadows across the grass. The colors of the sky shift from pale gold to deep crimson, then fade into the cool blues of twilight. The ring becomes dark and quiet, a silhouette against the fading light. You realize that this monument has witnessed countless sunsets, countless storms and seasons. It has stood here through the rise and fall of civilizations, through wars and peace, through all the changes of history, and it remains, unbroken, watching. The Ring of Brodgar is more than just a circle of stones. It is a reminder of our shared humanity, of the people who came long before us and looked at the same stars, the same horizon, with dreams and fears not so different from our own. It is a silent watchtower of time, standing on the edge of the sea and the sky, waiting for us to listen. New Grange, a tomb of winter light. There is a place in Ireland where time folds back on itself, where a shaft of sunlight pierces the darkness once a year, and a monument older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids awakens in a blaze of winter light. This place is New Grange, a sprawling, grass-covered passage tomb in the lush green lands of the Boyne Valley. To stand before it is to feel a strange mix of awe and quiet curiosity. For New Grange is not just a tomb, it is a story written in stone and shadow, a message from the people of an ancient world who sought to bridge life and death, earth and sky, past and future. The first thing you notice about New Grange is its size. It is enormous, a great circular mound stretching more than 80 meters in diameter, its sides layered with white quartz and grey stones that glint faintly in the changing Irish light. It rises gently from the landscape like a green hill, but as you draw closer, its man-made nature becomes clear. The stones are placed with precision, forming retaining walls and a curved facade that almost seems to ripple under the weight of time. At its base, a ring of massive curbstones encircles the monument, each one carefully carved and set in place, many decorated with mysterious spirals and geometric patterns that have endured for more than 5,000 years. You step closer, and your eyes are drawn to the entrance, an opening framed by a single great stone, etched with an intricate triple spiral, its design hypnotic and elegant. This stone, often called the entrance stone, is one of the most famous carvings in all of Ireland. Its curves and lines seem to dance with a sense of movement, as though hinting at the cycles of the seasons, the turning of the heavens, or the eternal rhythm of life and death. Passing this threshold, you cannot help but feel as though you are entering not just a tomb, but a world shaped by beliefs and knowledge we can barely comprehend. The passage beyond the entrance is narrow and low, a long corridor lined with massive slabs of stone, each one carved and placed with care. The stones are cold under your fingertips, and the air within the passage is cool, still, and heavy with the scent of damp earth and time. As you move deeper inside, the outside world falls away. No wind, no sound of birds or trees, only the dim light from your guide, or a lantern flickering against the ancient walls. It feels as though the passage stretches not just into the heart of the mound, but into the heart of history itself. At the end of this 19-meter-long passage lies the chamber, a high, corbelled room, formed by overlapping stones that rise and narrow, creating a domed ceiling that has stood uncollapsed for thousands of years. It is here that the mystery of New Grange becomes most apparent, for this chamber was not just a place to leave the dead, it was a place of light, a place of alignment, a place where the people of ancient Ireland created a living connection to the heavens above. Once every year, on the morning of the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight enters through a special opening above the entrance, known as the roof box, and travels down the passage, illuminating the chamber in a golden glow. For a few brief moments, the darkness of the tomb is broken, and the stones shine as though touched by fire. It is a breathtaking event, a kind of resurrection of light at the darkest time of the year, and it has been happening for over 5,000 winters. Imagine being one of the people who built this place. You would have watched the sun rise and set over the horizon, tracking its path with care and precision, learning when and where its rays would strike. You would have dragged massive stones, some weighing as much as 50 tons, across the countryside, using ropes, sledges, and sheer determination. You would have carved spirals, zigzags, and lozenges into the stones, symbols whose meanings we still debate, but which clearly held deep importance. And you would have stood here, at the end of the longest night, watching as the first light of the returning sun streamed into the tomb, warming the chamber, and reminding you that winter would pass, that life would return, that the cycle would continue. Newgrange is part of a larger landscape of ancient monuments in the Boyne Valley. Nearby are Knowth and Dowth, other great passage tombs built around the same time, each with its own carvings, alignments, and stories. Together they form a complex of sacred spaces that must have been central to the spiritual and social lives of the Neolithic people who lived here. These were farmers, hunters, and builders, people who understood the land and its rhythms, who lived close to the earth and the sky, and yet they left behind something that still astonishes modern engineers and archaeologists, a monument of stone and light that has endured for over 5,000 years. The carvings on the stones add another layer of mystery. Spirals are the most common motif, sometimes single, sometimes double, sometimes triple, winding inwards or outwards, as though representing both journeys into the earth and returns to the sky. Some researchers think these spirals represent the sun's path through the seasons, or perhaps the movement of the moon. Others believe they are symbols of life, death, and rebirth, a cycle of existence mirrored by the turning of the heavens. Standing before these carvings, you can feel their power. They are not just decorations, they are messages, encoded in stone, speaking across the ages. Inside the chamber, there are 3 recesses or alcoves, each one holding large, basin-like stones that may have been used to hold offerings or the remains of the dead. The people who built Newgrange were not just building a tomb, they were building a place where the living and the dead could meet, where the light of the sun could touch the bones of ancestors, and where the cycles of nature could be honored. It is a place where the boundary between worlds feels thin, where the living might have come to speak with their dead, to seek guidance, or to perform rituals that tied their lives to the cosmic order. One of the most remarkable things about Newgrange is how perfectly it is aligned. The roof box above the entrance is small and narrow, yet it is set at exactly the right angle to allow the solstice sunbeam to travel all the way down the passage to the inner chamber. This is no accident. It is the result of careful observation, precise planning, and a deep understanding of astronomy. Some researchers believe the builders spent generations perfecting this alignment, testing and adjusting until the sun's rays hit their mark. When you see it for yourself, when you watch that golden light streaming into the darkness, it is hard not to feel a sense of wonder. How did they do this, with only stone, wood, and human will? Newgrange also has an extraordinary history of rediscovery. For centuries it lay hidden beneath grass and earth, its entrance blocked and forgotten. Local farmers knew of the mound, of course, but it wasn't until the late 17th century that it was explored and recognized as something ancient and remarkable. Over time, archaeologists and historians began to uncover its secrets, excavating the passage, studying the carvings, and restoring the white quartz facade. Today, it is one of Ireland's most treasured heritage sites, drawing visitors from around the world who come to stand in its shadow and feel its timeless presence. Visiting Newgrange is like stepping out of the present and into a world where time moves differently. The Boyne Valley is often misty, its fields and hills glowing in soft shades of green, grey, and gold. As you walk up the hill toward the mound, you can feel the weight of the centuries pressing down, as if the land itself remembers. The air is often cool, carrying the scent of grass, rain, and the distant river. When you reach the entrance and run your fingers over the spirals on the stone, you are touching something carved by hands that lived 5 millennia ago. It is a humbling experience, one that reminds you of both the fragility and the endurance of human life. But Newgrange is not just a relic of the past, it is alive in its own way. Every winter solstice, people gather here to witness the light entering the tomb, just as it has for thousands of years. There is a lottery to be inside the chamber on that special morning, but even standing outside watching the sun rise over the hill, you can feel the magic of the moment. The crowd falls silent, the first rays of sunlight break through the horizon, and for a brief time, it feels as though the past and present are united in a single golden thread. There are still many unanswered questions about New Grange. Why did its builders invest so much time and effort into creating it? Was it purely a tomb, or was it also a temple, an astronomical observatory, a place of initiation? Were the spirals and carvings meant to record celestial events, or were they maps of spiritual journeys guiding souls into the afterlife? We may never know for sure. But perhaps that is part of its power, the fact that it resists simple explanations, that it invites us to wonder, to imagine, to listen to the echoes of those who built it. In the quiet of the chamber, with the stones rising around you and the corbelled roof arching above, it is easy to believe that this place holds a kind of ancient wisdom. You might close your eyes and picture the people who stood here thousands of years ago, farmers with rough hands, women weaving, children playing near the firelight, elders who watched the skies and marked the turning of the year. You might hear their voices, faint and distant, carried by the stones themselves. And when the sunlight streams into the chamber, you feel, if only for a moment, that you are sharing in something eternal. New Grange is more than just one of the world's oldest monuments. It is a symbol of humanity's desire to reach beyond the ordinary, to create something that connects us to the cosmos, to each other, and to those who came before. It stands in the green fields of Ireland, like a heartbeat frozen in time, a reminder that even in the darkest winter, light will return and life will endure. The forgotten city of Tiwanaku, high on the windswept plains of the Bolivian Altiplano, near the southern shores of Lake Titicaca, lies a place that feels like the ghost of a forgotten world. The city of Tiwanaku, sometimes spelled Tiwanaku, stands in quiet ruin, its broken stones scattered across a vast landscape of cold air and bright skies. To walk among these ruins is to feel both awe and mystery, for Tiwanaku is not just old, it is ancient, older than almost every city we know, and yet it remains one of the least understood. At over 12,000 feet above sea level, the air here is thin and crisp. The light feels sharper, the sky impossibly blue, and the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. It's hard to imagine that this harsh, windswept plateau was once home to a thriving civilization. Yet over 1,000 years ago, Tiwanaku was a place of power, religion, and trade, a sacred city that drew people from across the Andes. The first sight that greets you is the stonework. Gigantic blocks of andesite and sandstone sit perfectly aligned, cut with such precision that even today, with all our modern tools, engineers are left scratching their heads. Some of these stones weigh more than 100 tons. How were they moved, shaped, and set into place at such a high altitude? The builders of Tiwanaku left no written records, only silent stones that whisper of a knowledge we have yet to fully understand. The most famous of these stones stands tall and solemn, the Gate of the Sun. This massive monolith, carved from a single block of andesite, is etched with intricate images of gods, animals, and symbols. At its center is the image of a deity often called the sun god, with rays and tears streaming from its face, surrounded by 48 smaller winged figures. Was this a calendar, a gateway between worlds, or perhaps a map of the heavens? No one knows for certain, but to stand before it is to feel the weight of a time when gods and stars shaped the destiny of the people here. Tiwanaku was not just a city, it was a spiritual center. The Kalasasaya, a large ceremonial platform, rises above the surrounding plains like a stage for the heavens. From this platform, the priests and astronomers of Tiwanaku would have observed the movements of the sun, moon, and stars, aligning their rituals with celestial events. The stones of the Kalasasaya are arranged in a way that marks the solstices and equinoxes, turning this ancient ruin into a kind of observatory, a clock of stone that measured the turning of the seasons. Below the platform lies another mystery, the semi-subterranean temple. You descend a set of worn stone steps into a sunken courtyard, its walls lined with hundreds of carved stone faces, each one unique. Some of these faces look distinctly Andean, but others seem strangely foreign, narrow features, round eyes, or even elongated shapes that have led some to speculate about connections to distant cultures. Were these faces meant to represent the ancestors of the Tiwanaku people, or were they a catalogue of the many tribes and visitors who came here from far-off lands? Standing among them, with the wind whistling softly over the walls, it feels as if the stones themselves are watching. But the heart of Tiwanaku's mystery lies just beyond these temples, in a place called Puma Punku. Here, the ruins defy belief. Scattered across the ground are massive blocks of stone cut into shapes so precise, with edges so sharp and corners so clean, that they look as if they were made by machines. Some stones are shaped into interlocking forms, like giant stone puzzle pieces, as if they were meant to fit together with mathematical perfection. What kind of tools could have achieved this level of precision 1,000 years ago? Even modern engineers have struggled to explain the techniques used here. Some believe the stones were shaped using bronze tools, sand, and patience, but others insist there is something far more advanced or far more ancient at work. According to archaeologists, Tiwanaku began as a small village around 1500 BCE, but by 500 CE, it had grown into a sprawling city, the center of a powerful empire that controlled trade routes across the Andes. The people here farmed the high plains using raised fields and irrigation systems that turned the harsh land into a patchwork of fertile soil. They built canals, terraced hillsides, and stored food to survive the cold, thin air of the Altiplano. Llamas carried goods along mountain paths, and traders brought exotic items from as far as the Amazon and the Pacific coast. Tiwanaku was a hub, a meeting point of worlds, yet for all its power and ingenuity, Tiwanaku eventually fell. Around 1000 CE, the city was abandoned, its temples left to crumble, its stones scattered by time and weather. Some say climate change brought a devastating drought, drying up the fields and starving the people. Others think war and political unrest caused its collapse. But no one truly knows why this once great civilization disappeared. All that remains are the silent stones, the carved faces, and the memory of a people who once looked to the sun and stars for guidance. Legends among the Aymara and Quechua people tell of gods who walked here, teaching humans how to farm, build, and worship. One story speaks of Viracocha, the creator god, who is said to have risen from the waters of Lake Titicaca and brought knowledge to the first people of the Andes. Some believe that Tiwanaku was built as a tribute to these gods, a sacred city designed to mirror the heavens and honor the forces of creation. When you stand on the Calasasaya at sunrise, watching the light spill over the stones, it is easy to imagine that this place was once alive with chants, drums, and offerings to the sky. Today, Tiwanaku is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a place where archaeologists still dig, still measure, still try to piece together the puzzle of this ancient city. Excavations have uncovered pottery, textiles, and tools, as well as evidence of complex rituals and sacrifices. Some discoveries suggest that Tiwanaku's influence reached far beyond Bolivia, shaping the cultures of the Inca and others who followed. In many ways, Tiwanaku feels like the foundation of the Andean world, a city that set the stage for centuries of civilizations that would rise and fall across these mountains. Walking among the ruins, you can feel the quiet presence of time. The wind carries a soft hum as it moves through the gaps in the stones, and the light shifts across the carved faces, making them seem almost alive. The stones themselves are warm under the midday sun, but in the shadow of the gate of the sun, a cool breeze reminds you of the high altitude and the passing centuries. Every step feels like a journey deeper into mystery. Each block of stone, each carving, each alignment, a clue to a story we only half understand. There is something haunting about Tiwanaku. Perhaps it is the way the ruins sit in such open, endless space, surrounded by the distant peaks of the Andes. Or maybe it is the knowledge that this city, once alive with people and rituals, now stands empty, its voices lost to time. And yet, there is also a sense of resilience here, a feeling that these stones were meant to last, meant to endure long after their builders were gone. They are reminders of human ingenuity, of our desire to create, to leave something behind that speaks across millennia. The great stone faces of Mount Nemrut. High in the rugged mountains of southeastern Turkey, where the clouds often hang low and the winds whistle through jagged peaks, lies a place unlike any other, a place where the earth itself seems to stare back at you. Mount Nemrut, standing over 7,000 feet above sea level, is home to one of the most haunting and mysterious archaeological sites in the world. Here, colossal stone heads, some as tall as a person, rest silently on the mountainside, their faces worn by centuries of wind, snow, and sun. They are the great stone guardians of a forgotten kingdom, watching over the land as though frozen in eternal meditation. To approach Mount Nemrut is to feel the weight of time. The journey begins through a landscape of barren hills and narrow roads, winding higher and higher into the lonely terrain. There are no grand cities nearby, no bustling marketplaces or modern distractions, only the whispering winds and the occasional eagle gliding above. As you climb, the mountain seems to grow taller with every step, its summit a place shrouded in legend and mystery. When you finally reach the top, the sight is breathtaking. Before you lies a man-made mound, a massive funerary complex built over 2,000 years ago by a king whose name is all but forgotten in the modern world, King Antiochus the Phrees of Commagene. Antiochus ruled a small but wealthy kingdom during the 1st century BCE, a land that lay at the crossroads of great empires, the Romans to the west, the Persians to the east, and the Hellenistic Greeks who still left their mark on the world after the death of Alexander the Great. Antiochus wanted his kingdom and his name to live forever, so he built something extraordinary, something that would make the gods themselves take notice. At the heart of this monument is a massive tumulus, a cone-shaped mound of crushed rock that rises nearly 150 feet high. Beneath this mound, it is believed, lies the tomb of Antiochus himself, though no one has ever confirmed this. Surrounding the mound are terraces lined with colossal stone statues, figures of gods, animals, and Antiochus himself, who boldly placed his own image alongside the divine. Over time, earthquakes have toppled these statues, causing their enormous heads to roll down and settle on the ground. And yet, even in this fallen state, they are mesmerizing. Their faces, carved with intricate detail, still radiate power and calm. There is something otherworldly about these stone heads. Each one is between 6 and 10 feet tall, with features that seem to blend Greek and Persian styles. The gods represented here include Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, reimagined with the traits of Ahura Mazda, the Persian god of light and wisdom. There is also Apollo, the sun god, and Hercules, the god of strength, along with the goddess Tyche, the symbol of fortune and destiny. Flanking these divine figures are massive stone lions and eagles, guardians of the king's eternal resting place, and among them sits the head of Antiochus himself, as if he believed that through his monument, he too would become immortal. Standing among these statues, you can almost feel the ambition of the man who ordered them to be built. Antiochus was not content to be remembered as just another king. He declared himself semi-divine, a ruler chosen by fate, and he wanted his burial place to reflect this cosmic significance. The alignment of the site itself suggests that it was designed as a kind of celestial observatory. The terraces face east and west, perfectly positioned to catch the first rays of sunrise and the last light of sunset. On certain days of the year, such as the summer and winter solstices, the sun rises and sets directly over specific points of the monument, illuminating the stone faces in a golden glow. It is easy to imagine priests and worshippers gathered here, performing rituals as the heavens aligned with the stones. The eastern terrace is perhaps the most dramatic. In the early morning, as the first light spills over the mountains, the statues seem to awaken. Their features, weathered and cracked, glow softly in the dawn. The silence is broken only by the wind, carrying the faint scent of the dry earth and the chill of the high-altitude air. To the west, another terrace offers a mirrored scene, where the statues watch the sun sink behind the distant hills, as though keeping vigil over the passage of time itself. But beyond its beauty, Mount Nemrut is a mystery. Despite decades of study, archaeologists still don't fully understand how this site was built. The stones used for the statues are massive, weighing several tons each. How were they hauled up the steep slopes of the mountain? What kind of tools were used to carve such intricate details into the hard rock? And why, after Antiochus's death, did this incredible monument fade into obscurity? The kingdom of Commagene eventually fell, swallowed by the rising power of Rome, and Mount Nemrut was forgotten for centuries. It wasn't until the 19th century, when a team of explorers stumbled upon the site, that the world rediscovered its wonders. There are also legends surrounding the mountain. Some local stories speak of hidden chambers beneath the tumulus, filled with treasures and secrets of the ancient world. Archaeologists have long searched for the tomb of Antiochus, but the mound is made of loose stone, and any attempt to dig into it risks collapsing the entire structure. Modern technology, like ground-penetrating radar, has revealed possible voids beneath the mound, but so far, no one has dared to excavate them fully. It is as if the mountain itself is guarding its secrets, refusing to reveal the truth of the king's final resting place. To stand here, among the great stone heads, is to feel both small and connected to something vast. The sky above stretches endlessly, and the distant peaks fade into a pale blue haze. The statues, despite their fallen state, still command respect. Their eyes, though weathered, seem to gaze out at eternity, as if they are witnesses to the passage of countless generations. You can imagine the workers who once carved these stones, the priests who chanted prayers at sunrise, and the king who believed he would live forever through this monument. At night, Mount Nemrut transforms, with no city lights to dim the sky. The stars blaze in the darkness. The Milky Way stretches like a river of light overhead, and the statues sit in silent communion with the cosmos. It is not hard to imagine that this is exactly what Antiochus intended, to create a place where the earth, the heavens, and the memory of a king could meet in eternal harmony. Even now, more than 2,000 years later, the mountain feels alive, as if the stones are breathing, whispering stories that we are only just beginning to hear. The weather here is harsh, and the statues have suffered over time. The cold winters, with snow and biting winds, erode the stone, while the blazing summer sun cracks and fades the details. Yet, they endure. Restoration efforts have been made to preserve the site, but the sheer remoteness of Mount Nemrut makes it a challenge. Still, every year, travelers and historians make the pilgrimage to this mountain, drawn by the allure of its silent guardians and the mysteries they hold. There is also something deeply human about Mount Nemrut. For all its grandeur and ambition, it is ultimately a testament to a king's desire to be remembered, to leave a mark on the world that would outlast him. Antiochus's kingdom may have vanished, his language and people lost to history, but his monument remains, a message carved in stone, speaking across centuries. Perhaps that is the real power of places like this. They remind us that even in the face of time's relentless march, something of us can endure. Whether it is a story, a name, or a stone face staring into the horizon, we all leave traces behind. And on this lonely mountain, under the watchful gaze of gods and kings, you can almost feel that longing, the hope to be seen, to be remembered, to be part of something eternal. The step wells that lead nowhere. There is something profoundly mysterious about water, how it sustains life, how it slips through our fingers, and how civilizations have always bent their ingenuity toward capturing, storing, and honoring it. In the dusty heartlands of India, where the summers are harsh and the earth cracks under the weight of heat, an ancient solution rises from the ground like a paradox. Step wells, these are not ordinary wells, they are architectural marvels that sink deep into the earth, a labyrinth of carved staircases leading down to hidden pools of water. Some of them feel less like practical constructions and more like portals to another world, grand, ornate, and strangely silent. And among them are those whose purpose seems unclear, step wells that lead nowhere, empty of water, yet heavy with secrets. To stand before one of these ancient step wells is to feel as if you've stumbled upon a forgotten temple rather than a water reservoir. They are not just holes in the ground, but carefully designed structures, with flights of stone steps zigzagging down in mesmerizing patterns. The walls are lined with intricate carvings, geometric shapes, deities, and scenes from old epics. Even now, long after many of them have dried up, they retain an air of sacredness. The heat above ground feels relentless, but as you descend the steps, the temperature drops, the sound of the outside world fades, and you are enveloped by a cool, echoing stillness. The origins of these step wells trace back thousands of years. India, with its unpredictable monsoons and long dry seasons, needed clever ways to store water. Digging straight wells was often not enough, especially in arid regions like Gujarat and Rajasthan, where groundwater could be far below the surface. The answer was to build monumental wells with wide openings and steps that allowed people to descend as the water levels changed with the seasons. But in time, these wells became far more than practical solutions. They became meeting places, shrines, and even works of art. Take for example the famous Rani Ki Vav in Patan, Gujarat. Built in the 11th century, it is not just a step well but a masterpiece of architecture, stretching 64 meters long and 27 meters deep. Its walls are covered with over 1,000 sculptures, many of them depicting gods and goddesses. Walking down its steps feels like walking into the earth's memory. But Rani Ki Vav is still known, celebrated, and preserved. Other step wells, however, have been abandoned, left to crumble, and their stories are almost forgotten. These are the ones that intrigue us the most. The step wells that lead nowhere. Imagine coming across such a well in a remote village. At first you might think it's a ruin of an old palace or fortress. The stairways are elaborate, forming perfect symmetrical patterns, drawing your eyes downward as if inviting you into its depths. But when you reach the bottom, there is nothing, just a dry pit, empty and silent. It raises questions. Was this well ever completed? Did it once hold water, but now stands as a relic of a different climate? Or was it built for reasons beyond water? Something ceremonial, perhaps even mystical. In Rajasthan, the Chanberi is one of the most stunning examples of a step well, with 3,500 steps arranged in a perfect geometric pattern. It's so deep that standing at the top, the bottom seems to vanish into darkness. Legend has it that this well was built overnight by spirits, which might explain its almost otherworldly precision. While Chanberi still holds cultural significance and attracts visitors, there are countless lesser-known step wells scattered across the land, places where the stairs descend into nothing but dust and shadows. Some are so forgotten that even locals can't recall their names or histories. What makes these step wells fascinating is that they feel like reversed temples. Instead of climbing up toward the heavens, you descend into the earth, step by step, as though seeking something hidden below the surface. And unlike typical wells, which are purely functional, these structures suggest intention and design far beyond utility. Why carve ornate pillars? Why decorate walls with gods and dancers, if this was just about fetching water? These wells were places where people gathered not just to drink but to pray, to meet, to escape the heat, and perhaps even to reflect on the mysterious nature of life itself. As you descend into one of these step wells, you notice how the world above seems to fade. The noise of the village, the harsh glare of the sun, the dry air, all of it gives way to cool shadows and the smell of old stone. The steps are worn smoothed by countless feet that once walked this path. Sometimes a bird has made its nest in the cracks of the walls, or a small plant grows where moisture lingers. You can almost hear the echoes of ancient voices, women drawing water, children playing, travelers pausing to rest in the shade. And yet now there is only silence. You reach the bottom, expecting water, but there is none. Instead, the floor is cracked, and the air is heavy with the feeling of abandonment. Some historians believe that certain step wells were intentionally built as spiritual or meditative places, even if they never held water. The act of walking down hundreds of steps, deeper and deeper, might have been a form of ritual descent, an inward journey, much like meditation. In many cultures, descending into the earth symbolizes going into the underworld, into the hidden places of the soul. Could these step wells have been gateways to something beyond the physical? The architecture itself supports this idea. Many step wells are aligned with cardinal directions. Some are built with astonishing mathematical precision, creating optical illusions as you look across the steps. They seem to fold into one another, like a puzzle of stone. When you stand at the bottom and look up, the opening above becomes a perfect frame of sky. At certain times of the day when the sun is at just the right angle, the shadows of the steps create patterns that dance across the walls. It is as if the builders were not just engineers but philosophers and artists, designing spaces that spoke to both the body and the spirit. And yet there is something unsettling about these places. The silence is not always peaceful. Some step wells feel almost haunted, as if they remember the people who once relied on them. Local legends often speak of spirits dwelling in these wells, ghosts of those who died nearby, or guardians who protect the water. In some villages, step wells are avoided at night, believed to be places where the boundary between worlds grows thin. The darkness at the bottom seems to hold more than just shadows. You find yourself glancing over your shoulder, half expecting to see someone or something standing on the steps above. The mystery deepens when you realize that some step wells are found in places where water is no longer needed, or where the climate has changed so much that the well has become obsolete. What was once a lifeline for a village is now a hollow monument, slowly being claimed by time. Nature creeps in, roots crack the walls, dust settles on the carvings, and the once cool air grows heavy and still. Despite their abandonment, these wells remain powerful symbols of resilience. They remind us of the ingenuity of past civilizations, of how people once built grand, enduring structures not just for survival, but for beauty and meaning. They also speak to the passage of time. What was once vital can become forgotten. What was once full can become empty. And yet the steps remain, waiting for someone to descend. If you sit at the edge of one of these wells and gaze down, you might feel something stir within you. The steps, repeating endlessly, draw your eyes downward in a hypnotic rhythm. You wonder about the hands that carved these stones, the minds that envisioned this labyrinth. You imagine the first time water filled this place, rippling softly as sunlight filtered through the stairways. You think of the generations who came here, each one leaving behind a trace of their lives, now invisible, but somehow still present in the stones. And perhaps that is why these step wells feel so strange, even in their silence. They are not empty. They are full of echoes, of history, of lives lived long ago. To walk down their steps is to walk into a conversation between the past and the present. You feel small, yet connected to something vast and enduring. In the end, the step wells that lead nowhere might not truly lead nowhere at all. They lead to memory, to reflection, to a sense of awe for the people who built them. They remind us that even the most practical human needs, like the need for water, can inspire something extraordinary, something that transcends function and becomes art. As you climb back up, step by step, emerging into the sunlight once more, you can't help but look back at the dark, silent depths and wonder what secrets still linger there, waiting to be discovered. Petra's rose-red mystery. Beneath the sun-scorched cliffs of southern Jordan lies a city that does not simply exist. It emerges. It rises from the very stone itself, carved out of the desert's mountains, glowing with colors that shift like the sky at dusk. Petra, often called the Rose-Red City, is a place of contradictions. It is both ancient and eternal, silent and yet echoing with whispers of lives long past. For centuries, it lay hidden, forgotten by the outside world, buried beneath layers of sand and memory. Today, even as thousands of visitors tread its paths, the true story of Petra remains elusive, half-written, half-imagined, and entirely mysterious. To walk into Petra is to step into a dream made of stone. The approach alone is unforgettable. You begin your journey through a narrow gorge called the Sick, a natural passageway that snakes between towering sandstone cliffs. These walls rise so high and close together that sunlight barely touches the ground. Every step is a journey backward in time. The sound of your footsteps echoes off the rock, and the air feels cooler, heavier, as though the stones themselves are breathing. Carved by water over millennia, the Sick twists and turns like a labyrinth, and as you follow its winding path, anticipation grows. You know something lies at the end, but nothing quite prepares you for the sight that waits there. And then, through a slender crack in the cliffs, you see it, the treasury, or Al-Khazna. It appears like a vision, as though the stone itself has blossomed into architecture. The facade is immense, towering nearly 40 meters high, with columns and carvings so precise that it feels less like human craftsmanship and more like some divine creation. The sun strikes the sandstone, turning its shades of pink, gold, and crimson. In that moment, you understand why Petra is called the Rose-Red City. It seems alive with color, as if the stone itself remembers the desert's sunsets. But the treasury is only the beginning. Petra stretches over 60 square kilometers, its monuments and tombs carved directly into the cliffs. There are temples, theaters, stairways, and streets, all chiseled into living rock. It's not a city built in the conventional sense, it's a city sculpted, and that is part of the mystery. Who were the people who carved this astonishing place, and how did they achieve such mastery of stone in the heart of an unforgiving desert? Petra was the capital of the Nabatean kingdom, a civilization that flourished around the 4th century BCE. The Nabateans were traders, controlling vital routes that connected Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Frankincense, myrrh, spices, and silks passed through their hands, bringing them wealth beyond imagining. With that wealth, they built Petra, turning the desert into a city of grandeur. Yet, despite their success, the Nabateans left behind no written records explaining their world. Much of what we know comes from ruins, inscriptions, and the accounts of foreign travelers. Petra, therefore, remains half legend, half fact, a riddle carved in stone. The architecture of Petra reveals the Nabateans' remarkable ability to blend cultures. Their monuments combine elements of Greek, Roman, and local styles. Look closely at the treasury, and you'll see Corinthian columns, friezes, and mythical figures. But the details have a distinct Nabatean touch, an elegance and symmetry unique to this desert kingdom. The treasury's name is misleading. It is not a treasury at all, but most likely a tomb for a king. Still, local legends say that treasure was once hidden in the urn atop the facade. Some claim you can see bullet holes in the urn from those who tried, centuries ago, to shoot the gold loose. Petra's tombs are among its most striking features. Carved directly into the rock, they range from simple niches to elaborate facades taller than multi-story buildings. Walking among them, you can't help but feel the weight of time. These were not just burial places. They were statements of power and belief. The Nabateans believed in an afterlife, and their tombs were designed to honor the dead and guide them into the world beyond. But the exact rituals, the prayers, the symbols, all of these have been lost to history. You can stand before a tomb that took years to carve and still have no idea whose remains it once held or what ceremonies unfolded there. The monastery, or abderi, is perhaps Petra's most breathtaking structure after the treasury. To reach it, you must climb over 800 steps, a path that winds through rugged cliffs and valleys. The journey is demanding, but at the top, the sight of the monastery leaves you speechless. It is larger than the treasury, with a simpler, more austere design, yet no less magnificent. Standing before it, with the desert stretching endlessly beyond. You feel as if you were standing at the edge of time itself. And yet, for all its beauty, Petra was not just a city of monuments. It was a living, breathing community. Archaeologists have found traces of homes, markets, and workshops. The Nabateans were skilled engineers, building an advanced water management system to survive in the harsh desert environment. Channels and cisterns carved into the rock collected rainwater and stored it for dry seasons. This mastery of water was what allowed Petra to flourish in a place where life should have been impossible. Some of these channels are still functional today, a testament to their ingenuity. But Petra's mystery is not just in its construction, it's also in its decline. At its height, Petra was one of the great cities of the ancient world, a hub of trade and culture. Yet by the 7th century, it had been largely abandoned. The reasons are still debated. Some say shifting trade routes left Petra isolated. Others believe earthquakes damaged its infrastructure. Perhaps the desert simply reclaimed what was always meant to be its own. By the time Western explorers rediscovered Petra in the early 19th century, it had been forgotten for centuries, known only to local Bedouin tribes who guarded its secrets. One of the most compelling things about Petra is its ability to evoke stories. As you wander through its sandstone corridors, you feel as though the city itself is trying to speak. The wind whistles through the sick, sounding almost like voices. The stone seems to glow in the evening light, as if remembering the lives that once animated its streets. You can imagine traders arriving with caravans of camels, the clatter of wheels, the scent of spices filling the air. You can picture priests conducting rituals in the shadow of the monastery, or children running down the steps of the theatre. The theatre, by the way, is another wonder. Unlike Greek or Roman theatres, which were built as freestanding structures, the Nabateans carved theirs directly into the mountain. It could seat over 3,000 people, and its stage would have hosted performances, ceremonies, and perhaps even political gatherings. Sitting there now with the cliffs rising behind the seats, you can almost hear the faint murmur of an ancient crowd, the echo of drums, the rhythm of voices chanting stories that have long since been forgotten. Petra is also a city of colors. Depending on the time of day, its stone shifts from deep purple to fiery orange to soft pink. At dawn, the cliffs are cool and muted, but by midday, they blaze like embers. At sunset, the entire city seems to glow, as if lit from within. This play of light and color gives Petra a dreamlike quality. You can never quite see it the same way twice. It feels alive, changing, breathing, with the rhythm of the desert. But for all that we know about Petra, so much remains a mystery. Who exactly were the Nabateans? How did they gain their knowledge of engineering and stone carving? Did they inherit secrets from even older civilizations? And why does Petra feel so timeless? It is as though the city was not built just for its own era, but for all time, a message in stone meant to outlast empires and centuries. Walking through Petra today, you can feel both awe and melancholy. Awe for the sheer skill and vision of its builders, and melancholy for the fact that such grandeur could be forgotten for so long. What else, you wonder, lies buried beneath the sands of the desert, waiting to be rediscovered? What other stories have we lost simply because time chose to hide them? In the stillness of the late afternoon, when the crowds have gone and the sun is dipping low, Petra becomes something else entirely. The shadows lengthen, and the monuments seem to breathe. The treasury stands in quiet dignity, its facade glowing faintly, as if lit from within by memories of the past. You sit on a stone step, the desert wind brushing against your face, and you realize that Petra is not just a city. It is a memory carved into the earth, a reminder that all civilizations, no matter how powerful, are eventually swallowed by time. Yet Petra endures. Its stones hold the warmth of countless sunsets, its walls bear the marks of hands long gone, and its silence speaks louder than any history book. It tells us that beauty can rise even in the harshest of places, that ingenuity can defy nature, and that some mysteries are meant not to be solved, but simply to be felt. As the sky darkens and the stars begin to appear above the desert, you take one last look at Petra's rose-red walls. In the soft light, they seem almost alive, glowing as if whispering to the night. You walk back through the sick, the path winding between the cliffs, and you realize that part of you will always remain there, among the stones, the shadows, and the endless desert silence. The stone towers of Chanquillo. In the arid deserts of Peru, under the relentless blaze of the sun, there stands a series of ancient stone structures that have confounded archaeologists and historians alike for centuries. They are not towering temples or massive fortresses. nor are they monuments built to celebrate kings or gods. Instead, these structures are arranged in a long line, rising and falling along the crest of a low hill. Known as the Stone Towers of Chankilo, they are part of a site that is over 2,000 years old, and yet their purpose is so sophisticated that it still feels ahead of its time. The Chankilo site, located in the coastal desert of Peru, dates back to around the 4th century BCE. It is believed to be the world's oldest known solar observatory, a place where the movement of the sun across the sky could be tracked with remarkable precision. At first glance, the towers might not look like much, just a series of 13 weathered stone structures spaced evenly across the hilltop. But when you take a closer look, when you understand their placement and alignment, you begin to realize that this is not just a random construction. This was a place where people observed the heavens, measured time, and perhaps even structured their lives around the rhythms of the cosmos. Standing at the base of Chankilo, you feel the vastness of the Peruvian desert stretching out around you. The sand is pale and dry, and the air feels almost timeless, as though it hasn't changed in thousands of years. The wind carries a whisper of the past, sweeping over the stones and into the valleys. The towers rise like sentinels against the horizon, each one weathered by centuries of sun and sand, but still holding its place in the line, as if refusing to forget its ancient duty. Imagine the people who once gathered here, long before the rise of the Inca, long before Spanish ships arrived on these shores. There were cultures in Peru who looked at the sky and found meaning in its patterns. The builders of Chankilo understood that the sun was not just a source of light and warmth. It was also a clock, a calendar, and perhaps even a divine force to be worshipped and honored. With the towers, they created a device that allowed them to track the solar year with incredible accuracy. The site itself is composed of 3 main parts: the hilltop towers, a fortified temple complex, and several smaller structures scattered around the desert floor. The towers are spaced in such a way that when you stand at certain points to the east or west of the hill, you can watch the sun rise or set between the towers on specific days of the year. As the months pass, the sun shifts across the horizon, moving from one end of the row to the other. By observing which tower the sun aligned with at dawn or dusk, the ancient people could determine not only the solstices and equinoxes, but also the passage of time within the year. To think that over 2 millennia ago, a culture with no metal tools or advanced engineering could build something this precise is humbling. The towers themselves are simple, built of stone and earth, rising between 2 and 6 meters in height. They are not decorated with carvings or paintings, as far as we know, but their true beauty lies in their function. This was not a place for show, it was a place for knowledge, for understanding the rhythm of the natural world. Walking through Chankilo, you can't help but imagine what the ceremonies here might have looked like. Perhaps at dawn on the summer solstice, when the sun rose at the farthest point on the horizon, the people would gather in silence, watching as the first rays of light passed through the towers. Maybe they celebrated with offerings of food, music, and dance, honoring the return of the sun's strength. Or maybe this was a sacred duty performed by priests or astronomer priests, people who were responsible for keeping track of time, seasons, and the agricultural cycle. The desert around Chankilo is harsh, but it is also beautiful in its own stark way. The ground is baked hard, the rocks scorched by the relentless sun. There is little vegetation, just a few hardy shrubs and cacti clinging to life in the dust. The silence here is profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind or the call of a lone bird. In such a place, the sky becomes everything. When you stand on the hilltop among the towers, you can see for miles in every direction. The horizon is a perfect, unbroken line, and the sun dominates the landscape, rising and setting with a grandeur that feels almost sacred. Archaeologists believe that Chankilo might have been part of a larger ceremonial center. The fortified temple nearby suggests that this was not just a scientific observatory, but also a spiritual one. The thick walls and defensive structures hint at a time of conflict, where knowledge of the sun and seasons may have been a closely guarded secret. It's possible that the people who built Chankilo saw the sun as a deity, a powerful being whose movements needed to be tracked and understood to ensure survival. After all, in a desert environment like this, understanding the seasons is not just about curiosity, it's about survival. Knowing when the rains would come or when the heat would peak could mean the difference between a good harvest and famine. Chankilo, then, was not just a tool for measuring time, it was a lifeline, a way to bring order to an unpredictable world. There is a quiet power to places like this. When you stand among the towers, you feel as though you are standing in the presence of something both human and divine. The stones themselves are rough and simple, but they hold a memory of the people who shaped them, who carried them up the hill, who placed them in alignment with the path of the sun. It is almost as if the towers are still watching, still measuring the days as they pass, still holding on to their ancient purpose. One of the most remarkable aspects of Chanquillo is how it lay forgotten for centuries. Unlike Machu Picchu or other more famous sites, Chanquillo did not draw attention until relatively recently. It was rediscovered and studied by archaeologists in the late 20th century, and its true function as a solar observatory wasn't fully understood until the early 2000s. This means that for thousands of years, the towers stood silent, watching the desert, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. The rediscovery of Chanquillo reminds us of how much we still don't know about ancient civilizations. Who were the people who built these towers? What did they call themselves? What stories did they tell about the sun and the sky? We have no written records, no surviving texts to explain their beliefs. All we have are these stones arranged in a line, speaking to us across the centuries in the universal language of the cosmos. You can almost picture a priest standing in the desert dawn, gazing at the horizon with solemn eyes, waiting for the first sliver of sunlight to touch the top of a tower. Maybe he would raise his arms in greeting, chanting words that have long since been lost to time. Behind him, the people of the settlement might gather, their faces lit with awe and hope as they watched the sun rise between the stones. There's something deeply human about this desire to understand the sky, to track the movement of the stars and the sun. It's a trait we share with our ancestors across the world, from Stonehenge in England to the pyramids of Egypt, from the Mayan observatories in Mexico to the temples of India. Ancient cultures everywhere looked to the heavens for guidance. Chanquillo is part of that global story, a reminder that even in the harshest of environments, humans have always found ways to connect with the universe. Today, Chanquillo is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, a rare honor for such an ancient and relatively unknown place. Efforts are being made to preserve the towers, to protect them from erosion and the harsh desert winds that have worn them down over time. Visiting Chanquillo is not as simple as walking into a tourist hotspot. It requires effort, patience, and a willingness to stand quietly and let the landscape speak. As the sun sets over the desert, the towers cast long shadows that stretch across the sand. The light changes from gold to deep orange, and the horizon glows with a fire that feels both ancient and eternal. You can almost imagine the priests of Chanquillo watching the same sunset thousands of years ago, marking its position, whispering their observations to one another. In that moment, the gap between past and present feels thin, as though you are standing not just in a place, but in a story that has been unfolding for millennia. The genius of Chanquillo is not just in its precision, but in its simplicity. It does not require advanced tools or technology. It relies on something as constant and unchanging as the sun itself, and yet, it speaks volumes about the intelligence and creativity of the people who built it. They looked at the landscape, the hills and the sky, and they saw not just a desert, but a canvas on which they could draw the passage of time. There's a kind of poetry in that. The stone towers of Chanquillo are not just stones, they are a conversation between earth and sky, between humans and the universe. They are a reminder that even in the most desolate of places, people have always sought meaning, always reached for something greater than themselves. The desert lines that no one can explain. Across the desolate expanse of southern Peru, where the desert is a flat and lifeless sea of rust-colored earth, lies one of the greatest mysteries ever carved into the surface of our planet. These are the Nazca lines, immense, sprawling geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, their designs so enormous that they can only be fully appreciated from high above. For centuries they have baffled historians, archaeologists and explorers who created these lines. Why would anyone carve gigantic figures of animals, plants, and geometric shapes into a barren desert that can only reveal its secrets to the sky? Standing on the ground, the lines seem almost unremarkable, shallow grooves scraped into the hard desert surface, some no deeper than a few inches. But from the air, the patterns unfold into immense shapes: a spider with outstretched legs, a monkey with a coiled tail, a hummingbird frozen mid-flight, a whale, a lizard, a condor, and countless geometric lines and spirals. The sheer scale of these drawings is staggering. Some of them stretch over hundreds of feet, and the longest lines run straight for miles, perfectly aligned across the desert floor. When you stand on the edge of the Nazca Desert and look out over the horizon, you feel the silence pressing in. There is no wind, no rustle of trees, no water to break the stillness, only the endless reddish-brown plain under a vast pale sky. It is here, in this empty and unforgiving landscape, that ancient people made their mark on the earth, in a way that defies all logic. They had no planes or satellites to view their work from above, and yet, they created something that can only be fully seen from the heavens. The Nazca Lines are believed to have been created between 500 BCE and 500 CE by the Nazca culture, a people who thrived in this desert environment long before the rise of the Inca. They were master artisans and engineers, known for their textiles, ceramics, and irrigation systems. But nothing they built compares to the mystery of these geoglyphs. Why would a desert culture, struggling just to survive in such a harsh landscape, pour so much time and energy into creating something that they themselves might never have seen in full? The desert itself is what has preserved these lines for so long. The ground here is covered in a dark layer of iron oxide-coated pebbles. When the Nazca people scraped away the top layer, they revealed the lighter-colored sand beneath, creating a striking contrast. Because this part of Peru is one of the driest places on Earth, with almost no rain and little wind, the lines have remained virtually untouched for over 1,000 years. It's as if time itself has stood still here, leaving behind a message that we still struggle to understand. Walking along one of these lines, you feel a strange sense of connection to the people who made it. There are no tools left behind, no footprints or structures, only the lines themselves, stretching endlessly across the plain. Some of the straight lines go on for several kilometers, so perfectly straight that even modern surveyors are impressed by their precision. How did they manage to create something so vast, so accurate, without modern instruments? Were they guided by some kind of advanced surveying techniques we don't yet understand? There are dozens of theories about the purpose of the Nazca Lines. Some believe they were religious offerings to the gods, giant drawings meant to be seen from above, as messages to deities in the sky. The hummingbird, for example, might have been a symbol of fertility and rain, vital in this dry desert land. Others think the lines were astronomical calendars, mapping the movements of the sun, moon, and stars. Certain lines and shapes do align with solstices and equinoxes, suggesting that the Nazca may have used them to mark important dates in the agricultural cycle. But not all the theories are so grounded in reality. Some suggest that the Nazca Lines were landing strips for alien spacecraft, a theory popularized by Erich von Daniken in the 1960s. While most archaeologists dismiss this idea, it's not hard to see why it captured people's imaginations. Standing here, looking at lines that run straight as an arrow for miles, or shapes so enormous that they can only be seen from the sky, you can't help but feel that these creations were meant for some kind of celestial audience. Imagine the scene over 1,000 years ago, a group of Nazca people standing in the blazing desert sun, carefully scraping away the dark stones to reveal the pale earth below. There are no trees for shade, no rivers for relief, just the relentless heat pressing down. Yet, they work with precision, marking out lines that stretch far beyond what they can see. Perhaps they used ropes and wooden stakes to guide their paths, mapping out shapes on a scale so vast that it would take generations of knowledge to pass down the designs. At night, the desert would come alive under the stars. The Nazca were people of the earth and sky. They would have looked up at the constellations, weaving their myths and stories around the patterns of light above. It's possible that the lines on the desert floor mirrored the lines of the heavens, connecting their world to the cosmos. Some researchers even believe that certain geoglyphs represent constellations or star maps. The monkey, with its spiral tail, might not just be an animal but a reflection of celestial patterns. The spider, another iconic design, is associated with rain and fertility in Nazca mythology, and it's possible that the creation of the spider geoglyph was a plea to the gods for water in this barren land. There is something haunting about the Nazca Lines. When you see them from above, either in photographs or by flying over them in a small plane, you realize how much they stand apart from other ancient monuments. Unlike pyramids or temples, which dominate their landscapes and demand attention, the Nazca Lines are subtle, quiet. They lie flat on the ground, blending into the desert, unless you know where to look. It's as if they were never meant for human eyes at all. There's also the question of why the Nazca people chose this desert as their canvas. It is an unforgiving environment, where life struggles to take hold, and yet, perhaps that is why they chose it. Here the land is vast and unbroken, a blank slate under the sky. By carving their designs into the earth, they could create something eternal, something that would outlast even their own civilization. And indeed, the Nazca culture did not survive. Like so many ancient peoples, they vanished long ago, leaving behind only fragments of their lives, pottery shards, textiles, and these mysterious lines. Their disappearance is as puzzling as the geoglyphs themselves. Were they wiped out by drought, by conflict, Or did they simply fade away, their culture dissolving into the sands of time? Standing in the Nazca Desert, you can almost hear the whisper of the wind over the stones, the echoes of a people who once lived here, who once looked at this empty plain and saw it not as nothingness, but as a canvas for something greater. It makes you wonder what messages we leave behind for future generations. What will endure when we are gone? What will speak for us when our voices are silent? Some researchers have suggested that the lines may have been walked as part of ceremonial processions. From the ground, a geoglyph like the hummingbird isn't visible as a shape, but walking along its outline might have been a form of ritual, a way of connecting with the spirit of the animal or with the gods. Imagine a procession of people slowly tracing the lines at dawn, carrying offerings, chanting prayers, their footsteps marking the same paths year after year, century after century. The Nazca lines remain one of the few ancient monuments that we can't fully explain. Unlike Stonehenge or the pyramids, where we have at least some clues about their purpose, the lines are an enigma. Every new discovery only deepens the mystery. In recent years, new geoglyphs have been discovered with the help of drones and satellite imaging, smaller figures of animals and people that were previously invisible to the naked eye. It's as if the desert is still revealing secrets, layer by layer, waiting for us to understand. What is most striking about the Nazca lines is how they connect us to a sense of wonder. They are a reminder that humans have always looked for ways to reach beyond themselves, to connect with the universe, to leave a mark that says, "We were here." They speak of patience, dedication, and a vision that goes beyond the horizon. As the sun sets over the Nazca Desert, the lines grow harder to see, fading back into the earth as shadows stretch across the plain. The air cools, and the stars begin to appear, bright and unbroken in this remote part of the world. You can almost imagine the Nazca people standing here, watching the same stars, believing that their lines would connect the earth to the sky, their prayers rising with the night air to whatever gods they worshipped. The desert lines will likely remain a mystery for years to come. We may never know exactly why they were made, or what rituals surrounded their creation, and maybe that's part of their power. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be felt, to be stood in awe of, to remind us that the past is deeper and more complex than we can ever fully grasp. The staircase that climbs the ocean. There is a place where the sea whispers of forgotten worlds, where beneath the endless waves lies a staircase that no human hand seems capable of building. Imagine an ancient structure rising from the depths of the ocean, its massive stone steps shaped so perfectly, so deliberately, that they look as though they were designed for giants to ascend. This is the mystery of the Yonaguni Monument, an underwater wonder that continues to baffle scientists, divers, and dreamers alike. The waters around Yonaguni Island, at the far western tip of Japan's Okinawa prefecture, are known for their clarity. When the sun strikes the surface, the ocean glows with shades of deep blue and green, like a jewel that shifts with every ripple. Beneath this serene surface, however, lies a world carved from stone, a world that should not exist. Descending into the depths, divers find themselves facing towering walls, perfectly cut terraces, and enormous steps that lead downward as if towards some ancient forgotten city swallowed by time and tide. The Yonaguni Monument was discovered by accident in 1986 when a local diver named Kihachiro Aratake was exploring the seabed. What he found was unlike anything he had ever seen before. Rising from the ocean floor were geometric shapes that looked startlingly artificial, flat platforms, straight edges, sharp corners, and a staircase-like structure that seemed to climb toward the surface. Since then, countless divers and researchers have traveled to this remote location, trying to understand the origin of this underwater formation. The monument itself is massive. It stretches nearly 165 feet in length and 65 feet in width, with its highest point just 16 feet below the surface. Its most striking feature is the staircase, a series of broad, flat steps cut into the rock, each one measuring several feet in height. From above, the monument resembles a pyramid or a ziggurat, with multiple levels stacked upon each other, like the steps of an enormous altar. Swimming through this place, you can't help but feel the weight of time pressing in. The stone feels too cleanly carved, too sharp-edged to be entirely natural. There are ledges, corridors, and what looks like the outline of roads or plazas. Some divers claim to have found what appear to be pillars, carved faces, or even animal-shaped statues. Whether these features are the product of human hands or natural erosion is still fiercely debated, but the sense of purpose in their design is undeniable. The ocean current that sweeps around Yonaguni makes diving here both exhilarating and dangerous. As you drift past the monument's steps, you feel as though you are gliding through the ruins of some ancient dream. The silence of the deep, broken only by the hiss of your breathing, adds a surreal quality to the experience. You reach out and run your fingers over the smooth stone, tracing the edges of the steps, wondering if someone long ago once walked where you now swim. Some researchers argue that the Yonaguni monument is a natural formation. They believe that the sandstone and mudstone in the area are prone to fracturing along horizontal and vertical planes, creating flat surfaces and straight edges when exposed to natural forces like tectonic shifts, wave erosion, and seismic activity. It's true that the waters around Yonaguni are geologically active, and the region has experienced earthquakes that could shape stone in unusual ways. But can nature alone create something that looks so precisely carved, so architectural in its scale and design? Proponents of the man-made theory believe that Yonaguni could be the remains of an ancient civilization, possibly dating back more than 10,000 years, long before recorded history in Japan. If true, this would mean that the monument predates known human construction in the region, perhaps even existing before the last ice age when sea levels were much lower. Some suggest that Yonaguni could be a remnant of a lost city, a Japanese Atlantis swallowed by rising seas after a catastrophic event. Imagine that possibility for a moment, a thriving city built thousands of years ago, its people carving terraces, platforms and temples into the bedrock, only for the ocean to rise and claim it. What stories would have been lost beneath those waves? What gods would they have worshipped, and what knowledge would they have carried that we can no longer reach? The idea of Yonaguni as a sunken city is made all the more intriguing by local legends. The Ryukyu Islands, of which Yonaguni is a part, are steeped in myths of undersea palaces and dragon kings. Folklore speaks of Ryugujo, the palace of the dragon god, which lies beneath the ocean and is said to be made of coral and crystal. Could the Yonaguni monument have inspired such legends, its mysterious shapes glimpsed by fishermen and divers throughout the centuries? When divers descend to the base of the monument, they sometimes speak of the eerie feeling that comes over them. The ocean floor here feels almost like a plaza, wide, flat, and surrounded by towering walls. One section resembles a grand staircase leading down into shadowy depths, as if inviting you into the heart of something long forgotten. Another section, nicknamed the Gate, looks like a massive doorway cut into the stone, flanked by two vertical walls that rise like silent sentinels. The currents push against you as you swim closer, and the water is filled with a greenish-blue haze. Sunlight filters down through the surface, casting rippling patterns of light and shadow across the stone. It feels like standing at the threshold of another world, one that belongs to the past, yet exists here and now in the silence of the deep. Could the monument have been part of an ancient port or harbor? Some researchers speculate that it might have been used as a ceremonial platform or even a fortress. Others suggest it was an astronomical observatory, designed to align with certain celestial events when it was above sea level. The truth is, we don't know, and perhaps that's what makes the Yonaguni monument so captivating, the fact that it defies easy explanation. Consider the scale of the monument. The steps are so large that they would be impractical for normal human use. They seem more like terraces designed for massive structures or rituals involving large groups of people. The largest platform is broad enough to hold hundreds of individuals. Was it a gathering place for some ancient ceremony, a stage for offerings to the gods, or something even stranger? The questions keep coming as you explore the site. If it was man-made, how did they carve it? The tools of the time, if it truly dates back thousands of years, would have been primitive. Yet the precision of the cuts, the right angles of the steps, suggest advanced techniques. Did these ancient builders possess knowledge that we have lost? Some divers have reported seeing markings on the stone, faint carvings or inscriptions that hint at human involvement. These markings, however, are controversial. Many argue they are natural grooves created by the ocean's relentless movement. And yet, the mind can't help but see patterns, to imagine that there is meaning in the lines and shapes. As you ascend slowly from the monument, looking down one last time, the structure seems to shift under the play of light and shadow. It no longer feels like a random rock formation. It feels alive, like a relic with a story to tell. If only we could hear it. The debate over Yonaguni continues to this day. Some archaeologists remain skeptical, insisting that the monument is entirely natural. Others, including marine geologist Masaki Kimura, have spent years studying the site and are convinced of its human origins. Kimura even claims that there are multiple structures in the area, including what appears to be a stadium, roads, and even a castle-like formation. If Yonaguni is indeed the remains of a city, it would rewrite our understanding of early human civilization in this part of the world. It would suggest that people were capable of large-scale construction far earlier than we thought, and that they left behind monuments that were later swallowed by the sea. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Maybe the monument began as a natural formation, its flat surfaces and steps shaped by geological forces, and was later modified by humans who recognized its potential as a ceremonial site. This blending of nature and human craftsmanship is not unheard of. Many ancient structures around the world were built by shaping and enhancing natural landscapes. What draws us to places like Uniguni is not just the mystery of how they were made, but the sense of connection they give us to the past. Beneath the ocean, among the quiet stones, you can feel the weight of history pressing down. Whether carved by nature or human hands, the Uniguni monument is a reminder that the earth itself is a storyteller, holding secrets that may never be fully revealed. When the currents finally pull you back toward the surface, and you break through the water into the bright light of day, the monument feels like a dream, something glimpsed but not fully understood. The ocean swallows it again, hiding its secrets beneath the waves, as it has for thousands of years. The temple that whispers to the stars. High on a barren plateau where the earth is dry and the winds move like slow whispers, there stands a temple that seems to have been built not for mortals, but for the heavens themselves. It is not merely a structure of stone and mortar, it is a monument that feels alive, a place where shadows and starlight meet in perfect harmony. Some say this temple was built thousands of years ago, long before our modern understanding of astronomy, yet its walls and columns align so precisely with the movements of the stars that it feels as if it was designed by someone who knew the sky better than we do even now. This is the temple that whispers to the stars, a place where the boundary between Earth and cosmos blurs, and where the past reaches out to remind us of how much we still do not understand. Imagine arriving at the site as night begins to fall. The last light of the sun lingers on the horizon, painting the sky in deep hues of gold and purple, while the first stars begin to flicker above. The air is still, and the stones of the temple seem to hold the warmth of the day, glowing faintly as if they've stored the sunlight within them. As darkness deepens, you notice something strange. The stones do not simply fade into the night. Instead, they seem to catch the starlight, as though each block is a fragment of the night sky pulled down to earth. The pathways, the doorways, even the steps leading up to the central altar are positioned so that, when the stars move across the sky, their light touches each surface at just the right angle. It's as if the temple is engaged in an eternal conversation with the universe above. What kind of people built such a place? We know that ancient civilizations often had a profound connection to the cosmos. For them, the stars were not just distant balls of fire, they were gods, guides, and timekeepers. The temple that whispers to the stars might have been a place where those early stargazers came to seek answers, to align their lives with the rhythms of the universe. Standing here now, you can almost imagine them, priests in long robes, their faces lit by the glow of torchlight, looking up at the heavens and recording the movements of planets and stars in ways that seem impossibly advanced for their time. Many scholars believe that such temples were built as astronomical observatories, but this one feels different. Its architecture suggests more than just observation. The central chamber is open to the sky, but its openings are not random. They align with specific constellations during certain times of the year. There is a narrow slit in one of the walls that, at the exact moment of the summer solstice, allows the first ray of sunrise to travel through and illuminate a single carved stone at the heart of the temple. The precision of this design speaks of deep understanding, not just of the stars but of time itself. It is as though the builders wanted to ensure that their connection to the cosmos would endure for millennia. When you touch the stones, you notice their texture, smooth in some places, rough in others, as though they were shaped by both human hands and the elements. You can see faint carvings, worn down by centuries of wind and rain. Some of these carvings look like maps of the night sky, with lines connecting dots that represent stars. Others appear to be symbols, spirals, crescents, and shapes that resemble suns and moons. It's as if the temple is both a physical and spiritual map, guiding not just travelers on Earth, but also souls seeking a path to the heavens. As the night deepens, the sky above the temple transforms into a sea of stars. The silence of the place is profound, broken only by the occasional sound of the wind moving across the plateau. You begin to understand why some call this place sacred. It doesn't feel like a ruin or a remnant of a forgotten past. It feels alive, as though the stars themselves are leaning closer to listen. Some visitors say they feel a kind of vibration when they stand in the center of the temple, as if the stones themselves are humming in tune with the earth. It's subtle, almost like a whisper, but once you notice it, you can't ignore it. There is a legend that surrounds this temple. The story goes that it was built by a people who were not just farmers or warriors but dreamers, people who believed that their souls were made of starlight. They believed that when a person died, their spirit returned to the heavens, becoming a new star in the sky. The temple, then, was not just a place for worship, but a kind of gateway, a place where the living could speak to the stars, to their ancestors, to the gods who watched from above. The builders believed that if they built their temple in harmony with the cosmos, the stars would answer. Could it be that these ancient people understood something we have forgotten? We think of ourselves as advanced, with telescopes that can peer deep into the universe. But perhaps they had a different kind of knowledge. They didn't just look at the stars, they lived with them, felt their patterns and wove them into the fabric of their lives. Standing in this temple, you can't help but feel that connection too. The vastness of the night sky feels closer here, almost within reach. When dawn approaches, the temple reveals another of its secrets. As the first light of day touches the horizon, the entire structure seems to come alive. Shadows stretch across the ground, moving in patterns that were clearly planned by its builders. Certain stones catch the light first, glowing like beacons, while others remain in shadow. It's as if the temple is performing a silent ritual, one that is repeated every single day for thousands of years. The builders of this temple may be long gone, but their intentions remain etched into every stone. They wanted to remind future generations that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. The stars are not just distant lights, they are part of our story, just as we are part of theirs. And when you stand in the heart of this temple, you feel that truth. Even today, with all our technology and modern understanding, we can't fully explain how such ancient structures were built with such precision. The stones are massive, far too heavy for simple tools, and yet they are perfectly aligned, both with one another and with the cosmos. Was it sheer determination and genius, or is there something we're missing? Some even speculate that knowledge from a lost civilization, perhaps one far older than we currently believe, might have been passed down to the builders of this temple. Whatever the truth, the temple that whispers to the stars remains one of the world's great mysteries. It stands as a reminder that the past is not as simple as we think. There are chapters of human history that remain unwritten, waiting for us to uncover them. As you leave the site and look back one last time, you can't help but feel that the temple is watching you, just as it has watched countless travelers, priests and dreamers over the centuries. The stars above begin to fade as the morning light grows brighter. Yet even as day takes over the sky, you know that when night falls again, the temple will resume its silent conversation with the universe. Its whispers may be too soft for us to hear, but they are there, written in stone and shadow, in light and time. And as long as it stands, it will continue to tell its story, not just to those who visit, but to the stars themselves. The labyrinth, buried beneath the sands. There is a place in the desert where the wind moves like a whisper over the dunes, and the sun blazes so fiercely that the horizon itself seems to waver and bend. Beneath this ocean of sand, where centuries of storms have hidden secrets older than our own understanding of history, lies a structure that has baffled explorers, scholars, and dreamers for thousands of years. A labyrinth, not of myth or imagination, but of stone, once real, once vast, and perhaps still waiting to be rediscovered. They call it the Lost Labyrinth of Egypt, a colossal underground maze that ancient writers described as greater than all the temples of the pharaohs combined, a place that could hold thousands of rooms, corridors, and hidden chambers, each more mysterious than the last. Yet today, we cannot find it. It is as though the earth itself has swallowed it whole. The story begins with the accounts of early travelers, men who saw wonders with their own eyes and then struggled to put into words what they had witnessed. One of these was the Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote of a structure so immense that it defied belief. He described the labyrinth as having 12 covered courts, facing one another, and 3,000 rooms, half above ground, half below. He claimed it was adorned with intricate carvings, and that the lower levels contained the tombs of ancient kings and sacred crocodiles. Herodotus was not known for exaggerating in this particular case. Even the Egyptians of his time regarded the labyrinth as an ancient marvel, built long before the pyramids he himself visited. Other writers, like Strabo and Pliny the Elder, also mentioned this incredible construction, each adding their own descriptions, but all agreeing on one thing: it was larger and more astonishing than any temple they had ever seen. And yet, where is it? How does something so enormous, so elaborate, simply vanish? Some say that the labyrinth, believed to be near the ancient city of Crocodilopolis in the Fayum region of Egypt, was slowly consumed by the desert over time, its stones reused by later generations, its halls collapsing under the weight of centuries of neglect. Others whisper that it still exists, buried deep beneath the sands, its passages untouched, its secrets waiting for someone brave or lucky enough to find them. Modern archaeologists have found tantalizing hints, fragments of foundations, strange alignments of stone, and underground anomalies detected by radar, but the full labyrinth remains elusive. It is as if it is hiding, not just from our sight, but from our understanding, as though it wants to remain a legend. If you stand in the desert today, where the labyrinth is said to have been built, you would see nothing but flat land stretching out toward the horizon. The heat is heavy, and the air shimmers with mirages, giving the illusion of walls and towers that vanish as you approach. You might think that Herodotus and others were mistaken, that perhaps the labyrinth was no more than a story. But the desert has a way of hiding truths beneath its shifting sands. We have seen this time and time again, cities lost for centuries suddenly rediscovered when the winds blow a certain way, or when a sandstorm uncovers something forgotten. It is not impossible that beneath your feet, only a few meters down, the labyrinth still waits, its corridors silent but intact. Imagine walking through such a place when it was alive and thriving. The walls would have been carved with intricate hieroglyphics, each room dedicated to a different god or king. Priests would have walked these halls carrying torches that cast flickering light on the stone walls, making the carved figures seem alive. The labyrinth was not just a maze to confuse intruders, it was a sacred structure, a reflection of cosmic order. Some researchers believe it may have been designed to represent the journey of the soul through the afterlife, with each corridor symbolizing a trial or passage toward enlightenment. To walk through the labyrinth might have been to walk through the path of creation itself, a journey meant only for the initiated. There are even theories that the labyrinth was connected to the Great Pyramids, not by physical passageways, but by a shared purpose. While the pyramids were built as tombs for the pharaohs, the labyrinth may have served as a kind of spiritual archive, a place where knowledge, rituals, and sacred relics were kept safe. Some legends even claim that beneath the labyrinth, deep underground, there are chambers filled with scrolls and artifacts from civilizations long before Egypt, records of a time when the world was younger, perhaps when a lost, advanced civilization left behind clues of its existence. The desert night adds another layer of mystery to this place. As the sun sets and the stars appear, the land cools and the silence deepens. You can almost hear the echoes of footsteps, as though the labyrinth remembers those who once walked its halls. The wind that brushes against the dunes sounds like whispers, and if you close your eyes, you might imagine that the whispers are voices calling from beneath the earth. Voices of the past urging you to uncover their secrets. Modern exploration has made attempts to find this lost wonder. In the early 20th century, a team of archaeologists found traces of a massive stone foundation at Hawara, near the Fayum. They believed they had discovered part of the labyrinth described by the ancients. The dimensions were staggering, suggesting that the structure that once stood there was indeed monumental. Yet, excavation was difficult, and much of what lay beneath remained inaccessible due to high water tables and the sheer weight of accumulated sediment. To this day, Hawara remains one of the most promising sites, but the full extent of the labyrinth, if it exists, has yet to be revealed. But what if the labyrinth is not just a physical place, but something more? Ancient cultures often built their sacred structures as mirrors of the universe. The labyrinth may have been a map of the stars, with each corridor and chamber corresponding to a constellation, each turn representing a cosmic event. If this is true, then the labyrinth was as much about understanding the heavens as it was about navigating the earth. Perhaps it was built not only to house kings and sacred animals, but also to teach, to guide those who entered through a spiritual journey aligned with the cycles of the cosmos. Consider for a moment the psychological impact of such a place. Walking through endless corridors, with no clear path and no sense of time, you would be forced to confront not just the maze itself, but your own mind. The labyrinth becomes a metaphor for the human experience, life's twists and turns, its dead ends and unexpected pathways, all leading, ultimately, to a center, a truth. Could the ancient builders have understood this? Did they intend for those who entered the labyrinth to emerge not just physically exhausted, but spiritually transformed? As you stand in the desert, the thought of this labyrinth becomes almost tangible. You can picture its grand entrance, flanked by towering statues, perhaps of crocodiles or falcons, guardians of the sacred path within. You imagine stepping inside and feeling the air cool, the sounds of the outside world fading away until all you hear is your own heartbeat echoing against the stone walls. Each step takes you deeper, the corridors twisting and turning, the carvings on the walls telling stories that grow more mysterious with each turn. The mystery of the labyrinth has fascinated not just archaeologists but also writers, adventurers, and dreamers. Some even believe that the labyrinth was never meant to be fully understood. that it was designed to remain partially hidden, a riddle left for future generations. There is something haunting about the idea of thousands of rooms, all empty now, all silent, buried beneath the sands. What lies inside them? Artifacts that could rewrite history, treasures beyond imagination, or simply the bones of a civilization that wanted to leave behind something eternal. One cannot help but think of other lost wonders, cities swallowed by jungles, temples sunk beneath the sea. They all tell the same story: time is powerful, and even the grandest human creations can vanish if left long enough. But the labyrinth is different, because we know it existed. We have written accounts, ancient testimonies, and enough archaeological hints to be certain that it was real. It is not just a myth like Atlantis, it is a truth half buried, waiting to be uncovered. And yet perhaps part of its allure lies in its absence. The very fact that we cannot find it makes it all the more mysterious. It reminds us that the Earth still holds secrets, that not everything has been mapped or explained. In a world where so much of our history is displayed in museums and books, the labyrinth remains a blank page, an untold story. As dawn breaks over the desert, the wind sweeps across the sands once more, erasing any footprints, as if the land itself is guarding its secrets. Somewhere beneath those dunes, whether in fragments or in full, the labyrinth sleeps. It has survived countless seasons, endless storms, and the rise and fall of empires. And it waits, perhaps patiently, for the day when someone will uncover its halls and bring its whispers back into the light. The mysteries of our past are endless, and every stone seems to whisper a story we may never fully understand. If you enjoyed this journey through the world's most unsolved prehistoric structures, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Until next time, keep wondering what secrets the past still hides,